Mike, yeah, it's going now.
Okay, we can quick summary. We called the meeting to order at what 8:31. We did roll call.
Yeah,
please.
Yeah, Aaron Ortega is present, Annabelle Kobo is not present, Mitchell Henke is present, Montavious Jones not present, Kathleen Minnick present, Ben Teal present, Barry Weber present, Stephen Owen present, and Monica Walker-Smith present, and then there are 3 vacant members.
I think it's 2 vacant because we have an odd number.
Sorry.
All good. And so we are currently considering approval of last month's minutes. We heard a motion to approve from Kathy. There's a second.
I second.
Second from Barry. Thank you. And hearing no objections, minutes from last month's meeting are approved. And if it's all right, I'd like to swap the 2 agenda items we have for today. Is that okay, Angela?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. So we'll move up the West Silver Spring Drive reconstruction item. This is something that is led by the city of Glendale, but it's an interesting project in that I believe it's a reconstruction between the Milwaukee River and 27th, but there's some intersection with the city of Milwaukee borders, and I think Kevin is here to share more about the city's role, potentially other things about it.
Sure.
I don't know, is Kevin's there? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I'm mostly here just because I've been the coordinating point of contact between the city of Glendale and their engineering staff and design staff on the project and the city of Milwaukee. As you said, Mitch, the project is is split between the 2. Glendale is the lead by area. It's about 30% in the city of Milwaukee and about 70% city of Glendale. The only stretch that is where both directions are in the city of Milwaukee is from 25th to 27th. So just the far western end of the project, 2 blocks. Everything east of there is either entirely in Glendale or the south half of the roadway is in the city of Milwaukee. So basically, and this is, 2 things to note. So one, at some point during the design phase, the scope of the project changed. So it is not a full pavement replacement or reconstruction project. It is, I guess in engineering terms, I would characterize it as an intensive resurfacing. That has to do with the city of Glendale's budget for the project. Relatively small community, so they have to watch their capital dollars very, very carefully, and therefore it was more of a, we're going to fit the project scope to the amount of money we have rather than find extra money if we need to. That being said, we received what they're calling 60% design documents last week. And although we still plan to provide additional comment back to them on some things we'd like tweaked, we are, as DPW staff, much more satisfied with where things look like they are right now than where they were at the 30% phase. The city of Glendale is under a lot of, under self-imposed pressure to get this done very quickly. If they actually pull this off, this might be the fastest federal project I've ever seen. And it's because the earmark they received through Congresswoman Moore's office for the project needs to move or they could lose the money. So they need the project to reach PS&E, but basically be ready for construction. They're telling us November, which is, mere weeks away. So again, from I think from a designer's perspective, we will be impressed if they pull that off, but that's not really for us to decide one way or another. And so really we're just focused on providing comments.
What is PS&E?
Yeah, sorry. Plans, specifications, and estimates basically means it's ready to go out for construction bid. Sorry. Yep. Always ask me when throw out acronyms.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
So as a, I guess, quick overview, I did notice that they updated the plans were updated, you mentioned, and it does look, I think, a lot better
Mhm.
as far as especially pedestrian and cyclist infrastructure. I'm trying to, they don't have like a summary or anything, and so I'm kind of just looking at the plans visually, but it's, I
Yeah.
think, harder for me to summarize. Do you have like a rough kind of like, we're going to have separated trail
Sure.
here or multi-use path?
Yeah. Let me open it up so I can do a decent job summarizing that as well. But basically, so the city of Glendale is looking, as I said, on, again, kind of an intensive resurfacing. When we do a resurfacing in the city of Milwaukee, we tend not to move curbs. They are in more areas than we would, talking about moving curbs as part of this design, which is why it's kind of an odd blend. But where the pavement exists right now, they're not going to be going down to the subgrade to rebuild everything, which is why it's a resurfacing project. So they are, again, as Mitch, as you said, 27th to Milwaukee River Parkway. They are now generally proposing mostly separated or protected bike lanes for much of that stretch. A few things, so there was, because of the bridge over Silver Spring at Green Bay Avenue, initially they were not proposing any sort of, it seemed like any bike accommodation, but certainly not any sort of physical separation with the bike accommodation. They're now proposing that to go up behind the curb and basically join the sidewalk as a multi-use path, which we've done at Beecher. So we think that's a decent solution in that context. Probably a few things that the committee, so basically separated in some form, generally separated or protected bikeways. They're doing a different curb arrangement than we have done in the past in the city of Milwaukee. They're doing a kind of a 45-degree angle curb facing the bike lane and a flat vertical curb facing the cars. Other cities have done that, so that's not something they're completely making up or anything like that. So that may be a reasonable solution. Given the constraints of the corridor, the bike lane itself, I would say, is relatively narrow. That's something we're going to be providing them some comments on for a couple of reasons. One, it's narrow, and two, it's actually going to be difficult for us to clear the snow from that narrow of a bike lane. I think between that 45-degree curb and the outside curb is only about 5 feet in some areas, if I'm recalling correctly. And then finally, one of the things Mitch, I think they do have an exhibit version of the plans available on their website, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I was trying to link to
If we can get
those.
that quickly, Zach, or not, or on the screen here. But there we go. Take the top one.
I'll share this screen.
Yeah.
So let me do this first. I guess not.
There you go.
This one.
If it's going to load.
There we go.
Okay.
Okay.
This is
So
probably
this
better
is,
than me verbalizing things.
but this
so yeah.
isn't the entire stretch. This is just part of it, right? Yeah. But this was the only updated.
Looks like this is just one.
Yeah, it looks like it's kind of the mid part of the corridor. If you go west, Zach, just see how far it goes. Okay. Yeah, this isn't the entire stretch. This is interesting. I didn't realize that. So I guess a couple things to call out from a design details perspective. So one thing that we at the City of Milwaukee are planning to provide Glendale feedback on in the very near future is the interaction with the on and off ramps. In particular, the southwest corner of this interchange there may be right-of-way restrictions that we don't know about, which is why they're doing this, but we still are going to ask them to, if you look, let me back up. If you look at the northeast corner, you can see that they brought, with that kind of hashing, that's the bikeway. You can see they brought the bikeway up to the level of the sidewalk to cross the northeast corner on-ramp from westbound Silver Spring to northbound Green Bay. So you can see that what they've done there, and I think we think that's a reasonably safe crossing, at least about as good as you can do in this context. But if you look at the southwest corner, there's a much greater opportunity for a right hook type situation, because you're transitioning directly parallel to the cars rather than at a more perpendicular angle. So we're going to ask them whether or not there's room to bring things up ahead of time west of the on-ramp from eastbound Silver Spring to southbound Green Bay, kind of mirroring what they did Kitty Corner. If you want to go a little east, Zach. The other thing that is a little bit, this is a bad example. Let's see here. Yeah, okay. So if you look at this Bridgewood Lane intersection right in the center of the screen right now, look westbound. You can see some of the conflict zones they're putting in between a right turn lane. So if you're in the bikeway heading west, there's a break in the protection to allow somebody to cross and turn, somebody driving to cross and turn right. There's also no separation then west of that between a right turning vehicle and someone in the bikeway, but there is concrete on the left side of the person biking, which means if somebody swings wide, you might not have room to dodge, basically. So we're going to talk with them a little bit about some different solutions we've used for this circumstance. See if we can there's not perfect within the scope. There's not. I don't think we're going to get perfection here, but we do think maybe there's some things that could be avoided. Not just focusing on bikes. This is also a good example of we will be working with them to better accommodate transit as part of this project. Right now, it's unclear how the buses will reach the bus stops because of the concrete barrier between the bikeway and the driving lanes. So we're going to be working with them on that as well. Otherwise, I think that pretty much highlights our thoughts at this point in time. And like I said, this is on a rapid pace. And I do want to, I know some of the people on the PBAC have been contacting Glendale. Others who live on the North Shore and not in the city of Milwaukee have also been contacting Glendale about this. So I do want to highlight that I think that advocacy has been effective because these changes would not have been made, I think, without advocates reaching out and highlighting to the city of Glendale how the design could be improved.
Yeah,
is that enough summary, Mitch?
Yeah, no, thanks. I appreciate the explanation and walking through it, and I'm also happy to hear that it was people kind of helped push this to a better place. Yeah, the initial design, I think, had a lot of safety issues, and so I'm really glad to see this updated edition. Angela, the westbound limit is 27th, I believe.
Correct.
One question I had on this, if you go, which one is this? Bridgewood? If you go west to the auto dealer, there's a right turn lane. Is that needed?
That is the sort of questions we will be asking. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, we're not, this is one of those things where because traffic engineering as a profession is, I would say, evolving pretty rapidly right now in some quarters and then not evolving as much in other quarters, different engineers are going to answer that differently. So we're just going to talk them through. We're going to talk with them about their logic for that right turn lane. But this stretch is entirely in the city of Glendale. So it's really just us saying, hey, have you thought about this? We can't tell them you can't put a right turn lane there, right? That's not our choice. So, but yes, those would be the sorts of locations, and there's others on the corridor too that are leading to residential streets that, maybe if we were leading the design, we probably wouldn't put a right turn lane, but that's, they've got different voters, they've got different public, and they've got different design preferences. So it's
Yeah, totally.
Yep. One thing I do
appreciate
want to
that.
highlight is that they do have a number of raised intersections along the project. I would say more aggressively than we've done raised intersections in the past. So, obviously we're happy to see that. And they'll be kind of, they'll be ahead of us if this project moves as fast as they're saying. Probably the next example that we were thinking of doing this many raised intersections was on the, perhaps the Sherman project. So, so that's great and good that they're doing that. One other piece to highlight, if you had, I think east of here, Zach, sorry.
Yeah, there we go.
Keep going. Where is it? No, it must be to the west. Anyways, maybe there's not one shown on here. They do have some chicanes that are between two parallel lanes of traffic. So if you're heading, if you're driving east or driving west, there's actually a diamond-shaped chicane between the two, again, parallel, same direction travel lanes. If those remain in the final design, I would say I think those are the first in the region, certainly on a road, on an arterial like Silver Spring. So that'll be interesting to see how the public responds to those. So
Like,
it's
these would be like poured concrete like separation.
Yep. Yeah, so it'll force people to basically swing out. So if you're in the left driving lane, you'll swing into the median. And if you're on the right driving lane, you'll swing out to the right, and then back in and rejoin parallel next to each other. It's an interesting potential solution. If it's successful, that may be something that we would look to consider in the future. Because we do, I think as an industry, we struggle with what do you do with roads where the volumes are high enough that you're probably going to stick with 4 lanes, and how do you traffic calm those when you are still giving people 2 lanes, recognizing that a substantial portion of the time outside of rush hour, those 2 lanes are probably, 2 lanes in each direction are not needed. So could be an interesting solution in those circumstances where, the determination is made to maintain 2 lanes in each direction, just like we have decided for Sherman, our Sherman Boulevard project. So
Ben has his hand raised. Mitch, I don't know if you saw that. Just so you know.
Yeah, Ben, please.
If you're talking, Ben, we can't hear you right now. You're muted.
Hi, sorry. I've actually been doing some riding up in this area recently, and I have just 2 concerns or points of interest really that I wanted to bring up. The first is I think probably outside of Milwaukee's direct jurisdiction, which is the pick and save in the middle near Green Bay. I think that's probably mostly in Glendale. But if there's any way that the city of Milwaukee can make it easier for people to bike to the grocery store, I think that's an important point.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, this whole stretch is in the city of Glendale, but yeah, obviously Oak Leaf Trail connection right there. And so we would hope that the crossing there of the shopping access and auto dealer entrance, as it's labeled here, that's the pick and save on the south side of the street for those who aren't familiar with the area, that crossing would be made safer, better. So yeah, we'll be commenting on that.
The second is unfortunately outside of the illustrations boundaries to the west. I wanted to bring up North 25th Street, which Glendale calls Beth Mar Lane. It's the same roadway, just different names. it along with 26th, both cross Silver Spring. And I think that of any of the streets in the area, especially the cross streets, those will probably be the two roadways in the city of Milwaukee that bicyclists would be using to get back and forth between like the Villard Oakleaf area and Silver Spring. So if there's any way to highlight some sort of crossing or improved bike lane or side path in that area, I think that would be an important emphasis, just because, of course, anyone on a bike is going to see North 27th Street and not ride there because it has the, cachet of being 27th Street. And there are just very few other cross streets in that area. Having biked in that area myself, I would use 25th/Bethmore Lane to get around that area. 27th itself is not horrible to bike on, but again, I think it's just really unlikely because people are going to see the street sign and avoid it. So if there's any way to highlight 25th or 26th as a crossing or an important thoroughfare cut through for bicyclists, maybe that's a good place to do it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's helpful.
Thanks, Ben. Any other committee members have questions or comments? I put a couple links in the chat. People are interested in reading or looking further. Anybody from the public? All right. I didn't have any. Just to follow up on the chicanes, I am also interested because these would be effectively like not bump outs, but like differently shaped, obviously, but similar. You just have a curb shaped thing that people have to navigate around, hopefully slow them down. But obviously differently placed in this case. So I am curious as well. Do you know what the timeline for construction is next year if they're trying to?
Yeah, they're aiming for next spring. So if they, like I said, if they achieve that, good for them. That's impressive.
Cool. Well, I wish them luck in that. And I appreciate all of the work that people have done to push this project in a better direction, and DPW's and yours work as well, where possible, to make it better. I think that's all. I think that's everything for this. Appreciate your time, Kevin.
No problem. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we can move on to the next agenda item, which is Hank Aaron State Trail. The city, I believe, has made a number of improvements on crossings. And Angela from the State Department of Natural Resources, I believe, is here to talk about it a little bit. Or Barry, do you want to add anything at the beginning?
I mean, I can, but Angela would definitely be a better authority to speak about it for sure. But I mean, I guess since I'm talking already, I'll just make a note. I know I sent an email to the group last night, but if you haven't yet, yeah, start checking out some of the improvements just with the crossings, in particular 76th Street. There's some new bump outs that have been placed there, just connecting with either side of the trail. So, and we also have a lot of wayfinding signs, not just in connection to the Hank Aaron Trail, but you've probably been seeing those popping up around like on Washington Boulevard and such. But yeah, like on 37th Street and on 32nd Street, you can now see a lot more signs pointing you in the direction of the trail, which is really nice to see. But yeah, Angela, do you want to take it over?
Sure. I will say I did not exactly give my staff too much notice about the 76th Street bump outs. They came back one day and they were like, so they were like, we normally like to get on there with the trailer. I was like, too bad. And I was like, you'll be fine. Like, um, cause yeah, that intersection itself is just, it's a tough crossing.
Mhm.
I mean, just on all ends. I mean, it tends to be like one of the ones that we use more for our maintenance vehicles. But even us trying to go across that or to turn onto it, like is never been easy. Um, so I'm glad to see the bike lanes there for the pedestrian and for the cyclist aspect of the trail, and told staff, well, they just need to make adjustments. Go down to 89. Go, like, that's not difficult in a vehicle. Plus that was never one of my preferred locations. Staff just apparently decided that was this year. I was like, that was never for maintenance purposes a preferred location that I got on because of the traffic that's on 76th. A couple things. Why'd that link open up? We did get a request from the department to submit any projects that we could under our threshold of 100,000 for DOA. Like 100,000 is our threshold for DOA funded projects, which require a lot more levels of approvals. So they did let us know that we were able to be provided with some funding. They didn't tell us how much of like the reallocated funds from this current biennium, but those were all restricted to projects under 100,000. My request to them was to do as much as I could on Canal Street as the highest priority for my 3 properties, but we don't know yet which projects are getting the go ahead. That came last week. The beginning of last week is when we got that request in.
Stuff on Canal Street, do you mean like pavement improvements or something else?
Yep. Yeah, mill and overlaying the section. We are working through adjoining Canal Street. We have the stadium segment that goes west of Valley Passage Bridge and then dead ends where it goes underneath the pedestrian crossover for the stadium access between their parking lot and the stadium itself.
Mhm.
That section we crack filled last year with staff, and then this year we had contracted crack filling done from like 35th to Valley Passage, and both of those are failing already. And the like
Yeah.
contracted one wasn't even until like we didn't even get that done due to contractor delays until like I think it was like end of July, early August. So we're still waiting back on the contractor to see if they will like come out and try to repair it under warranty, because it's 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 been in place less than 3 months and it's failing. But I reached out to our remediation redevelopment coordinator that handles the testing for that property, because that's another easement portion, right? Like Canal Street's an easement portion, stadium segments an easement portion. And it's capped landfill. So we already know like we have restrictions on if we remove soil, it has to be treated as hazardous, even if it's within those surface level areas, due to some test results that came back last year. But I don't know I tried asking him what he thinks is going on over there, because we went from like, okay, we have hairline cracks and we're planning to crack seal. And then over the course of like a couple months last year, those hairline cracks expanded to like 4 inches wide. Like complete separation. And in like 40 different areas. So it's not like, oh, this one section is maybe like settling or something. This is like throughout that whole portion. And I don't know if you guys with like DPW, have you ever experienced something like that? Because that's what's causing this to occur again this year with them failing. And our remediation redevelopment is at a loss for words, and I'm gonna check with our engineering staff too, because he used to do roadway engineering for DOT. But I was like, it's one thing when we see that like on occasion and we can identify like this is a distinct cause of it. But crack sealing is not going to fix that if we're not even getting the repair to last for 3 months.
Right.
I was thinking drainage issues, maybe.
Yeah, it's to only last a few months doesn't seem acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess to go back to the Canal Street segment, do you know if the funding were approved, would that be something that would be done next year?
Possibly our current biennium, like our major projects, are next year and then into early spring of 2026. Is when we have to like have all the funding expended.
But biennium, meaning this is a 2-year budget, right?
Yep. Yeah, so it's technically the 23-25 biennium. With our initial legislative biennium requests, what happens with those projects is they get lumped together into similar like projects. So, for instance, Haven Woods, we are repaving the parking lot from 1978. And that will get repaved in, that one's now looking more like summer of 2026, like early summer. They have like I think it's July 30th. Everything has to be expended. But that one project also includes repaving the boat launch area at Pike Lake and some of the fish access locations, like the department-owned boat launches, so that they could do a single bid for one contractor that will do all of the paving work. So we're currently moving forward with those like grouped together projects, and I'm not sure if these smaller ones that are now kind of like add-ons, I don't think those are getting grouped together with those. Those would be department led. So once they're approved, then it sounds like it would just be up to us at the property level to do the bidding process on them, which is a lot easier and it's a lot less time consuming. So depending on how long it takes for them to make decisions on what goes through, for a project like that, I can normally get a bid out and get a contractor on board and contract award within like 2 months. So I'm really hoping that the fact that I keep bringing it up in there, that we get legislative complaints, that this has been a project that I've been requesting for years, that this is like consistently the worst section of the trail. It's not going to be any better after We Energies completes their work. Like we need to have that leveled out. And resurfaced. So I can prioritize $100,000 worth of a section, and then that other request for the whole thing is still moving forward right now in the budget biennium request for 25-27.
Yeah, I mean that the pavement, especially on the eastern areas by Marquette, yeah, there's some difficult, rough pavement over there. It'd be great to see that.
I just ride on the
improved.
sidewalk right there if I can at this point. Yeah.
And
Do you-
Mike and I both met with James, who's I think still on here. Yep. From DPW earlier this week about some things that we can do more in the immediate future. I need to look back at design documents, and I should have some time this afternoon to look for paper files. When Canal Street section was constructed, for the specs that it was constructed to. But looking to incorporate any permitting going forward. Not allowing it to be just a 2-foot cut through. Because that's where a lot of those issues stem from, is that settles at a different rate than what's been out there. If they're not necessarily replacing with the same base that was there previously, that increases that differential settling more. And 2 feet is not not very good for a bike. So we're looking more at like that 8 to 10 feet, like requiring an 8 to 10 foot section of asphalt replacement if there's any cut throughs that will need to be made.
You're saying so a utility, Energies or whoever has to cut
Yeah.
up part of the trail, like lengthwise. You're saying 2 feet is the normal, what they've been doing, but you would make it longer
Mhm.
so that it settles more evenly or is less abrupt, I guess, if it does
Yeah.
settle.
Yeah, you
poorly.
kind of need it longer than a bike, so that like the 2 tires are not that, yeah. Riding wise, that it's not as abrupt. Yeah. Because there's not going to be something. I mean, that area is a business and industrial area. So even after we repave, we need some assurance about, that the city won't permit 2-foot cut throughs, which is why we're starting to try to get this process started and doing the 8 to 10 foot now, is so that when I get that ask from the department, hey, they just cut this up, why should we spend $600,000 on mill and overlay if the city's going to permit this? That I can say, well, we've already worked through an adjustment to that process. You can't guarantee in the future that utilities won't need to be relocated or updated. Like,
So the hope is, because if I understand this right, anytime a utility is going to be cutting through asphalt or pavement or whatever it is, they need a permit from the city.
yes.
And currently, whatever the process is, they approve it, and it's for these 2-foot cuts that are difficult to maintain.
Yeah.
And so in the future, the city might require 8 to 10 feet.
Yeah.
Or they won't issue the permit. Is that kind of what the goal is here?
That would be the requirement for the permit to be approved, is that they comply with an 8 to 10 foot replacement section versus 2 feet.
Sure. And if James wants to speak to that too.
Yeah,
please.
So for those that don't know me, I'm James Washington. I'm the coordination manager for DPW. I oversee private use of the right of way. So we do have the ability within reason to determine how, like, private utilities or companies, if they're making cuts in the right of way, how to restore it. So as Angela was saying, they put their conduit in. All they need is a 2-foot wide stretch, so they cut out 2 feet, and they're happy. Their utilities in, lights up, but then we're left with a trail with all these dips in it. So, if you're having a wider cut, then that means you're making it more stable versus that smaller 2-foot section that they're cutting out. So we can put that as part of our requirements that on any trail you have to restore an 8-foot section. So that should assist with some of that differential settlement.
I guess maybe this is a bigger question, but is there any reason to only do it for trails? Like if it's a sidewalk or something, like, is that potentially applicable as well?
It's applicable depending. Like for any new construction, they need permission to do any cut. Um, for I believe it's less than 5 years. Now I have to double check. But if you make a cut, you have to like replace a whole panel. So like in the street, you'd have to replace a 4x8 panel if you're doing a utility cut. You can't just cut the strip. And I guess that's been part of the issue. Like with older streets, the requirements are a lot less stringent. So then you're making smaller cuts, and then the pavement's already older. Then you get a little bit more of that deterioration more quickly.
And so,
But
for a sidewalk, if there's a utility cut, would they just replace the concrete square for any sidewalk that has been ripped up for utilities? Is that the requirement?
so for any sidewalk, they're required to replace a whole square or what we call a stone. So depending on the age of the sidewalk, it could be 5 feet or 6 feet. So you can't like, place like half of a sidewalk square. You have to replace the whole thing.
Right. Okay, cool. That's good to know. Also like learning about stone. That's cool. I mean, all of that makes sense to me. Is there anything that like would limit DPW in like requiring this for trails like the Hank Aaron?
Nothing that I know of. In my meeting with Angela, I mean, I said like we can require that like tonight if we wanted to. Obviously, it wouldn't be retroactive, but we can do that going forward. That if you're cutting into a trail, you can't just replace a little strip. You have to replace that larger section.
I mean, that sounds excellent to me. I mean, especially if it makes it both better going forward and also easier for DNR to request funding for maintenance and repaving. That seems like a win for all trail users and maintainers.
Yeah, and I had talked with Jarrell, who's James's boss, like it was January of last year, about the like initial like concerns that might come up with it being a non-exclusive easement. And I think that Jarrell said that it was like 3 years. It elevates like an additional approval level on to him if they're gonna be cutting through.
If it's less than 3 years old, or
Yep, and if we complete the mill and overlay, it would be considered an improvement and new construction. So like we would at the very least, like it may not be that things don't get cut through on the new trail, but it would require an additional level of approval in order to do so. And getting that wider replacement section requirement in beforehand would just get repeated individuals for that section kind of maybe more used to that process or that requirement in advance of a project. So I think it's steps in the right direction, and then I hope that our legislative representatives and governor's office and everybody is in support of the projects that I submitted.
yeah, same. So I think like, does policy wise for DPW on the permitting, like you can change it, overnight. Is there any like reason to not do it? Like, does the commissioner or somebody need to approve it and that's kind of it? Or, is it up to you alone, James? Can you just say, all right, these are the only permits that I'll sign off on?
Well, I mean, for the permits, I mean, we'd have to sign off on it, but we can put the requirements in what they can or how they have to restore it. Obviously within reason. Like I can't say like, okay, you're doing a cut, you have to replace the whole trail. But I mean, an 8 foot section is a reasonable restoration requirement, especially considering that if you're cutting through the trail, it's going to cause, settlement issues in the short term. So we can require how that you can settle that to restore the infrastructure for the users of the trail. So that's just a matter of, the requirements that we put in the permit approval.
And so, like, is that something that can be expected going forward? Any, like, say, utility comes next week and they need to cut up the trail. Will that include the like requirement of the 8 feet or 10 feet? Is that just
Yes, we
it
could.
going?
Yes, 8 feet is a reasonable restoration request for what they're doing. So yes, we can do that immediately.
I guess the question is, should people expect that if I see that, the trail is being cut up
Yeah.
in a couple weeks, like I should expect that the restoration should be that 8-foot length.
Right. So if there's like ongoing work, so like I can't say that someone who already has a permit in hand, I can't tell them, well, now you have to do this. But for anything going forward, I mean, as part of their permit approval, we can say this is the requirement that you have to restore the pavement.
So all future ones will require that then, which I think is great.
And Mitch, once I try to dig through the paper files at headquarters, because DNR didn't construct that section of Canal Street. The city had received a CMAQ grant for the construction of it. And so it's going to take me a little bit to try to find and see if we have the design documents for that. I'm going to be looking through archived emails from Melissa Cook, the former trail manager and stuff, because I want to make sure that if we have confirmation of what was under there to begin with, that we include those same specs for the replacement. And James will also probably propose something if they do a longitudinal cut as well, that it needs to be for the full width of the trail, because I'm a little bit concerned right now with like We Energies had to do some cutting on the north side of the trail, west of Ember Lane. And I'm kind of I'm watching it to see how they are replacing it, because those weren't lateral cuts. The lateral cuts, like, yeah, we were going to say you need to do the 8-foot wide, but I'm a little bit concerned that they might just like patch a 2-foot section that is like the north edge of the trail.
Like they would cut
Yeah.
half of the trail off.
Yeah, so I think that there's I want to make sure that we include something in there about that too, because I know with some of our former projects elsewhere on the trail, we've had longitudinal boring where it's had to go underneath the trail lengthwise. And when there's instances where they need to cut through, I don't want us to end up with these random squares. I want to make sure that the language is tight enough to accommodate both scenarios for a lateral or longitudinal cut, that whether it's for access or they're replacing a water valve cap or whatever. I don't want a square cutout. So
You're saying, so like if they replace part of the trail, the 8 feet would have to be the entire width, not just like some.
yeah. So yeah, I want to make sure that it's like you are replacing the full width of the trail to 8 feet length, or if you're doing a longitudinal access or cut, that it needs to extend. If it's more than 8 feet, that it needs to extend that length. So it's easier, I think, to try to come up with the strong language in advance than it is to necessarily add it later. So I just I'll be proposing and sending something over to James once I get the specs on what I would like included in specifically for HAST, but that he could then potentially utilize for other areas of trail as well. Because there is a specific, if it's Hank, they have to contact me, that is in their permits. And specific specifications that we can include specific for Hank versus in general.
Go ahead, James.
Yeah, I was going to say, just being completely candid, if it's longitudinal, I guess it depends on what the cut looks like. I'm not sure what utilities may be running directly underneath the trail, but if it's like a 50-foot long, I don't know, it could be a telecom, cable that they do that. I mean, it's a little bit harder to say to restore something that if it's longitudinal and it ends up being a significant length. But we can look at that. But I just wanted to say up front that that may be an issue, but we'll look at it.
Okay.
Yeah, I would appreciate looking into that as well, because you would end up with like a 50-foot like seam in the middle or off to the side or something potentially. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
If they didn't have to replace the full width.
Yeah, it depends on the cut. Like if someone's going transverse or across the trail, it's a lot easier for us to say, okay, you can't just restore that 2-foot strip. It has to be wider. It gets a little bit murkier if you're talking about a significant length, because that's a significant increase in cost. So then it starts getting a little bit, dicey with what we can do.
Sure. I mean, I would appreciate any, like, as far as you can go on that. I assume it depends on like what width they would have to tear up as far as that. Like if it's smaller, maybe it's harder. I think either way, I very much appreciate kind of pushing on this for the permits. It's like a small thing, but I hope like it has a big impact on kind of the future of how the trail, flat the trail can be and how maintainable it is cost-wise, both for DNR and others. Were there any committee members that had questions or comments on this? Both, the improvements to the Hank Aaron that happened recently, or on this permitting for utility cuts?
Just to kind of note, I mean, I'm trusting James when you've said that you think it's like a very reasonable thing what we've talked about with the recommending of the 8 to 10 feet cut and such going forward. Do we anticipate any resistance from We Energies in this case, or any other property owners for something like this?
There may be some pushback because, obviously they want to restore as little as they need to because, the more you restore, the more it costs. But we can have reasonable restoration requirements. So there may be someone that balks at it, but, we still can make it a requirement of the permit.
Cool. Thank you.
We had also included Menominee Valley Partners on our discussion earlier this week, just because of the location of it and connections with adjoining businesses. They have a meeting with St. Mary's Cement in a couple weeks, and they're gonna bring up the rubber flange that is on the rail track over by St. Mary's and the steam tunnel that goes across Canal. Just because there's portions of that are deteriorating or have pulled up or have gone missing. And they were the ones that I think Mike had the initial emails from them back in like 2018. But they're the ones that initially were required to install that. So try to get them to make repairs to that this year.
Thank you. Any other committee members? Questions, comments, or members of the public or other people present, DW staff? If not, I think unless Angela or James, you had anything you wanted to add to the discussion? Otherwise, I really appreciate both of your efforts on this. Like I said, seemingly like small kind of technical contract permitting change is not that exciting, but I hope it like makes it a lot easier and for a better trail going forward. So
yeah, and if there's ever a project up by like that goes farther west on Silver Spring, be great to actually have like a sidewalk and bike path that is continuous. Because that part bugs me quite a bit because I frequently am going from Haven Woods and going to like a contractor or a vendor or whatever west of us, and going Sherman down to Silver Spring. I'm like, there's no connection. We mow a path. That's not ideal for cyclists, but that's currently what we have right now. And then once they get down under the railroad tracks, it starts and stops because of the Army property. So.
Thank you both. Appreciate
you.
your time, James and Angela, and the
No problem.
updates.
You're welcome.
With that, can move on to work groups. Do any of the work groups have any updates, targeted improvements, projects, or policies?
I mean, speaking on behalf of Targeted Improvements, I don't believe we have any new updates, correct, Mitch and Ben and Kathy?
Correct.
I'm still creating a list of, or not creating. I'm collecting. I'm soliciting input for a list of bike lanes and sharrows that have disappeared and need to be repainted. So anyone should feel free to send me their observations so I can add it to the list.
Projects, I forget who's on.
Projects is me, Montavious, Anna.
Any updates?
No.
Good. Policies, Anna, Montavious. Who else? Hearing not, actually, I don't think either of them are here even. So
Yeah,
we'll
sorry.
assume
Policy work group. We had a little bit of a back and forth with some emails about the what we want to see in the policy that's going forward here. Hopefully, I think Kathleen said it was this month for the policy that we talked about for what was that? The corner
parking.
clearances. Yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully that
I
one's going
think-
forward with the next legislative package.
Yeah, I should check on Legistar. I think it may have, but I need to confirm. Well, thank you. Let's see what else. I think that is it, unless any of the work groups have a request for something or anything they wanted to add. Otherwise, can move to new business. So there's a couple new business for things to discuss at our meeting next month. I know there's a couple. I know that the Oklahoma protected bike lane project between, what is it, Howell and 6th, I want to say, something like that.
Yep, that's good. Just so you know, too, Stephen Hepner has his hand raised. I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah,
Stephen?
I'm hoping this is the appropriate place to raise my hand. So I'd like to talk about the stretch of trail that's supposed to go in. Where is that? Between Cornell and Purdue, or around 20th through 25th, I think. I'm part of the Milwaukee Dog Training Club, who just acquired, or the property that has about 520 feet of adjoining land to where that trail's going in. I was wondering if we could possibly coordinate with the city to make sure that what the improvements we want to do will work well with what the city's planning on doing, and basically make things nice. Um,
Hey, Stephen,
where?
this is
Oh,
Mike
go
Anderson
ahead.
with DPW. Are you talking about the former Beer Line Trail right of way between 20th and 24th Place,
here, let me see if I can.
kind of up just south of Hampton?
Yeah, it's actually, I'm trying to see if I can for my window. Here. Can you see this?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Yeah, it's here to zoom out. This little leg here.
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll
So
shoot my contact info in the chat here, Stephen. We can chat kind of offline if
okay.
you want to talk about that project.
Okay. Yeah, because
Yeah,
we've
that's
basically got the stretch right through here.
okay. Great. I will pull my contact info in now. Just connect and we can figure out a time to chat maybe this afternoon, even if you're free.
Cool.
Thanks, Mike. Right, new
As far
business.
as, yeah,
Go ahead.
Mitch, as far as business, I know we had talked previously about bringing in some of the staff who maintain the city app, correct? Or like if you call the city number, as far as, is there a better way to streamline requests for bike infrastructure improvements? I don't know if that's something we want to gear up for November or another date, but I just want to bring that up again.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll make a note of it. Thanks for the reminder. Zach, for the you said next month was good potentially to discuss for Oklahoma.
Yes.
Okay. I think we can mention. I know that there's a bike ride for it next week, but we can mention that in the events and announcements. Was there anything else that we would potentially want to discuss? DPW folks, if there's anything. Otherwise, I think that is fine. We can always chat later about what we might want to discuss for next month. Let's see. So events and announcements. Do you have the details for the bike ride next week, Zach or Mike?
Yeah, I do. So next week, Thursday, October 24th, the city and the Wisconsin Bike Fed are partnering to put on a community bike ride for called the Oklahoma Avenue Safe Streets bike ride to kind of a bike audit of the potential corridor for the Oklahoma and 6th Street Protected Bike Lane project. It'll start. People can start at two kind of locations. We'll gather at Humboldt Park, the southwest corner, and then the front yard area of Zablocki Elementary. The ride will start from the Humboldt Park side, follow the corridor to Zablocki Elementary, and we'll pick up that other group there, and then we'll go back to Humboldt Park. And then the people who started at Zablocki can go back, then we'll all go back to there. So it's kind of like a round trip from each location, which is kind of a unique way to do a bike ride, but I think it could be kind of a cool thing. But yeah, we'll be kind of going along the route there and getting stopping at a few different points and getting feedback from people about how they think that route can be safer for people of all ages and abilities.
And so it's you say the southwest corner. That's Howell, Oklahoma for Humboldt Park. Right? Cool. There was a question. Oh,
I think it's just related to
yes, dog park. Are there any other I guess public meetings input events for upcoming projects?
I'll just add too for the bike ride that starts at 5 p.m. It's 5 to 6 p.m. And you can find the information about that on the bike site's website, I think, and then also on our engage.milwaukee.gov website for the Oklahoma Protected Bike Lane project.
And I just wanted to add, it's not an event, it's just more of like kind of to go back to, I know I brought it up earlier, but I'm sure a lot of you have all had a chance to kind of see some of the new wayfinding signs. I mentioned that we have some now on 32nd Street in Merrill Park and 37th Street in Silver City, kind of connecting people around the Hank Aaron Trail. But if you've been riding down Washington Boulevard, right? Washington or Street? Sorry,
I think it's Washington Street.
Yeah, like Boulevard on Washington Street. You'll see them too. I think they're elsewhere as well. But yeah, just check those out too, because I mean, I've lived in this city, for gosh, going on almost 20 years, and yet it's still great to see those signs riding around and be reminded, oh yeah, I'm 1.3 miles from this if I turn this way. And I mean, wayfinding is just a great thing, and it's really cool to see that. And again, like we've mentioned it, but that god awful 76th Street crossing for the Hank Aaron Trail, just seeing the bump outs go in, there's still some things with the median strip we wish, of course, they could be better, but like that's still a huge improvement. And Zach, you were saying some new signage is still on the way for the crossing. So yeah, thank you, Zach, for being on this, and thank you to all of DPW. It's like really exciting to see.
Yeah,
So check-
seconded. And Scott Bike Boulevard looks awesome. Everyone here should go ride it this weekend.
Start that first or second in Washington on the east side, and then going west. Traffic circles, lots of signs.
Yeah, I rode the at 76 at the Hank Aaron yesterday, and that was quite an improvement to have those bump outs.
Like Cade, your hand up. Go ahead.
Washington Street, is the Washington Bike Boulevard completed?
Yes, it is. I think there might be there's some like bump outs maybe that were still being finalized at like 2nd in Washington. I think there's still some construction stuff out there, but yeah, it's essentially all done.
Go ahead.
With Washington Boulevard, so yeah, it's fantastic. Love it. I will say I was riding it the other day, and it was at night, and I ran across some of those drain tile, unexpected little spots in the street, and my hands were hurting for a while afterwards. Mike, do you still want members to just, when they can, if they notice anything like that, just send you pictures or send you info about like some of those tiles if they're noticing any issues with them?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
All right.
Were there any other meetings for projects coming up in the next month? I'm trying to remember. Can't quite hear you.
Keep it Wauwatosa is having their North Avenue reconstruction meeting the 26th. I think the DPW people or multimodal people are having a community review of the Hopkins bike lane project for 2026.
Oh,
at the I don't remember the event name, but it's from Locust to Burleigh on I don't remember, but that's going on too.
that's tomorrow. Looks like from 3 to 6.
Yeah, I can just jump in and clarify. So that's the Halloween event that the Dominican Center is throwing in the Amani neighborhood. Kate, I'm so sorry. I had trouble hearing you, so I'll just say it a little louder. It's taking place on 26th Street from Locust to Burleigh, so a 2-block kind of block party. And we'll be doing some engagement with those neighbors who live close to the Hopkins corridor about safety improvements they would like to see. We'll have some big maps with Post-it notes.
Ooh.
there any other events? I'm trying to check my calendar.
I don't have an event. I just want to give a shout out to DPW for the infrastructure projects map. I've been using it a lot more recently. Mike, if this was your team, 3 cheers. It's fantastic. Thank
Yeah,
you
it's
so
great.
much. Whatever Multimodal did for that.
Thank you. It was not us, but thank you. It was Sarah McClanahan, our marketing and communications officer, led that effort with the help of many units. But yes, it is a great improvement, and Sarah's been fantastic.
Is there a link to that?
Yep, I just dropped it in the chat.
Oh, great.
Cool. If anybody else, members of the public or otherwise, committee members, DPW, have any other events or announcements that they wanted to make? If not, I would hear a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion from Barry to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second, Kathy.
From Kathy, thank you. Hearing no objections, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody that attended. Thank you, Zach, for staffing it and taking care of all of the administrative stuff. For all the members.